The wind of the western plains carried whispers that day, whispers about the woman they called too ugly to marry. Folks in Dry Creek didn't say her real name anymore. They just spread tales of a cursed girl, a face so scarred no man could stand to look at her. No one knew the truth, only that one morning the sheriff rode out with her tied in the back of a wagon, her head covered with a rough burlap sack. Elias Monroe, a bounty hunter turned drifter, had seen plenty in his years, but when he saw that wagon rolling through the open prairie, something in him stirred. He wasn't one for gossip or superstition. He believed in what he saw, and what he saw now was injustice wrapped in burlap and silence. He slowed his horse, riding closer, eyes narrowing. The woman sat still, hands bound, her posture calm like someone who'd already accepted her fate. A faint red stain marked her dress, not blood from a wound but perhaps from some cruel jest, paint thrown by townsfolk eager to mark her shame. Elias's jaw tightened. "That ain't right," he muttered. By nightfall, he caught up with the wagon. The sheriff, drunk and lazy, had made camp near a river bend. Elias waited until the man passed out beside his whiskey bottle, then stepped out of the shadows, his revolver glinting under the moonlight. He approached the wagon quietly. The woman flinched when she heard his boots on the dirt. "Don't be afraid," Elias said in a low voice. "I ain't here to hurt you." She didn't reply. The burlap sack shifted slightly as she turned toward him, breathing hard. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "They said I ain't fit for anyone to look at." Elias's heart clenched. The night wind rustled through the grass, carrying the distant cry of coyotes. "I don't give a damn what they said," he murmured. "Nobody deserves chains for being different." Slowly, he reached for the knot behind her head. The rough rope scratched his fingers as he loosened it. For a long second, he hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment, the hush of destiny pressing on his chest. Then, with a breath, he lifted the sack. Moonlight spilled across her face, and his heart stopped cold. Night fell heavy across the plains. The stars came alive bright and cold while the small campfire Elias built flickered against the darkness. The woman sat across from him, still with the burlap sack over her head, her hands now free but trembling in her lap. The firelight danced across the edges of her dress, torn and dust-covered. Elias poured coffee into a tin cup, the scent of roasted beans mingling with the desert air. "Can't have you passing out before we reach town," he said, handing the cup to her. She didn't take it. Her voice came out low and raw, almost a whisper. "Why don't you just deliver me tonight and be done with it?" Elias studied her through the firelight. "Because I don't ride in the dark, and I ain't rushing a job." A long silence followed. The fire cracked, the horses snorted softly behind them. Then she asked, "Do you even know what they said I did?" Elias shrugged. "They said you were cursed, ugly enough to drive men mad." Sounded like nonsense to me. But nonsense pays, so here we are. For the first time, he heard something like a bitter laugh from under the sack. "Cursed," she repeated, her tone thick with pain. "That's what they call a woman they don't understand." Elias felt a weight in her words that he couldn't explain. There was no fear in her voice, now only exhaustion. He tossed another branch into the flames. "You got a name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Used to," she said finally, "before they burned it out of me." The wind moaned through the prairie grass, carrying the ghosts of the past between them. Elias leaned back against his saddle, staring into the fire. He'd seen killers, thieves, outlaws, but something about this woman didn't fit that mold. She wasn't dangerous. She was broken, and that unsettled him more than a pistol to the head. Minutes stretched into hours. The fire shrank to embers. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that the sack wasn't hiding. Something ugly it was hiding. Something the world had no right to see. He stood slowly, walked to her side, and reached for the coarse fabric. She stiffened. "Don't," she whispered, but there was no anger, only fear. "Can't keep hiding forever," he said quietly. And before she could stop him, Elias lifted the sack. The flicker of firelight touched her face and his heart went still. It wasn't ugliness that the world had feared. It was her beauty, raw, scarred, yet fierce like the desert after rain. Elias took a step back, breath caught in his throat. "Lord help me," he murmured. "They lied." She turned her face away, the faintest tear slipping down her cheek. "They always do." The night swallowed their silence. And somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried a lonely hymn to two souls who'd just crossed a line neither could return from. Morning came painted in gold. The sky stretched wide over the plains, the kind of endless blue that made a man feel small. Elias Boone tightened the saddle straps and glanced toward the woman. She stood near the wagon, her hair catching the light like strands of honey and ash. Without the sack, she seemed more human yet somehow more unreachable. "Town's half a day's ride," Elias said, trying to sound casual. "You ride with me. Safer that way." She nodded, silent, eyes fixed on the horizon. He helped her onto the horse, his hand brushing hers for a fleeting second, rough skin meeting fragile warmth. She flinched at first, then steadied herself. Elias climbed up behind her, the leather creaking under their weight. The horse started forward, hooves thudding against the dry earth. For a while, they rode in silence. Finally, Elias said, "You got a name you want me to use?" After a pause, she murmured, "Clara." It fit her, simple, soft, but strong enough to carry storms. Elias nodded. "Clara it is." They rode for miles, the sound of hooves and wind filling the air. But even as the land rolled by, Elias couldn't push the thought away the way her face haunted him now. Not for its beauty, but for the ache it carried. He had seen pain before, but hers was something else. It was the kind that came from being punished just for existing. As they reached a ridge, Clara spoke suddenly. "You're not taking me to the sheriff, are you?" Elias hesitated. That was the deal. Then why untie me? Why take off the sack? Her words hit harder than a bullet. He didn't have an answer that made sense, not to her, not to himself. He only said, "Didn't feel right." They stopped at a stream, letting the horse drink. Clara knelt, cupping the cool water in her hands. Her reflection trembled on the surface. "They said I cursed a man," she said quietly. "Said he died after looking at me. Truth is, he was drunk and cruel, and when I fought back, they called me a monster." Elias's jaw tightened. Figures. Folks love their monsters. Makes it easier to sleep at night. For the first time, she didn't look like a prisoner. The wind carried the faint sound of hooves from afar, too many for comfort. Elias turned, scanning the horizon. Dust rose in the distance. Riders. He cursed under his breath. "They've found us." Clara's eyes widened. "You mean, men from Tumbleweed probably don't want you talking." He reached for his rifle and mounted fast. "Hold on, Clara," he said, his voice low but fierce. "You wanted to know if I was taking you to the sheriff?" Change of plans. The horse kicked up dirt as they sped toward the hills. The wind screamed across the canyon as Elias urged the horse faster, its hooves striking sparks from the rocks. Clara clung to him, the world a blur of red cliffs and sunburnt sky. Behind them, the riders were closing in 5, maybe 6 men. Gunfire cracked through the air, echoing off the walls like thunder. "Hold on," Elias shouted. A bullet whizzed past his shoulder, grazing his coat. The horse veered hard, nearly throwing them. But Elias steadied the reins and guided them toward the narrow pass ahead. Clara looked back, fear in her eyes. "Why are they chasing us? I thought they wanted me dead." "They don't want you dead, Clara," Elias said grimly. "They want you silent." The pass opened into a dry ravine, where jagged rocks offered cover. Elias jumped down, pulling her with him. "Stay low," he ordered, crouching behind a boulder. He loaded his rifle with steady hands, eyes sharp, breath slow. The riders thundered closer, their shouts echoing through the canyon. Elias fired once one man dropped. Another shot, another cry, but there were still too many. Clara grabbed his arm, trembling. "You'll be killed." Elias smirked faintly. Wouldn't be the first time someone tried. He handed her his revolver. "Can you shoot?" She hesitated. "My father taught me before everything." "Good. Then aim straight, don't flinch." The next few moments were chaos dust. Gunfire, the echo of courage and desperation. Clara fired once, twice, each shot more certain than the last. Elias moved like a shadow, striking from behind cover, every bullet finding its mark. When the dust settled, only silence remained. The last rider turned his horse and fled into the distance. Elias leaned against the rock, catching his breath. A streak of blood marked his arm, but he waved it off. Clara rushed to him, pressing her hands to the wound. "You're hurt." He gave a faint grin. "You shoot better than half the men I know." She looked up, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on her cheeks. You risked your life for me. Why? He paused, the truth sat heavy on his tongue. Because I've hunted people all my life. For the first time, I found someone worth saving. Clara's breath caught, her heart pounding in her chest. The silence between them wasn't empty now, it was electric, fragile, alive. We can't go back to Tumbleweed, he said. They'll come again. Then where? She whispered. He smiled softly. Wherever the world forgets our names. As the light faded, Clara stepped closer, her hand brushing his. They called me cursed, she said. But maybe the curse was never mine. No, Clara, he said, voice low and certain. You were never the curse. You were the truth. The desert wind carried their silence away, and for the first time, both of them felt something they'd thought long buried: hope.